Okay.
Hey everybody, welcome to the INAV Fixed Wing Group's Wing Talk. I'm your host, Steve Schlesinger, and today we have a really special show. We're talking all about a brand new plane called the Raphax. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. So before we get into the plane, I want to introduce my fellow Rat Pack members live from Halle, Germany. It's Mr. Marc Hoffman. Marc, how you doing, babes?
Yeah, I'm doing great, thanks. Just went back from my last Raphax flight in a little incident, and now waiting for a great show with you guys.
Okay, other Rat Pack member is our longtime friend, good bud, Minister Darren Lyons, all the way from the UK. It's Portsmouth, right?
Yeah, Portsmouth. Yeah, so just down the road from Luke. But yeah, I'm having a great day too. It's been not too great weather here, but yesterday was a nice flying day, so got out, enjoyed myself. So yeah, can't wait for this unveiling. It's going to be great.
So yeah, then we have well, that sounds great, man. Because yeah, I had an absolutely stellar morning this morning. Got out and got a couple flights in. Don't have that Raphax yet, but I'm looking forward to that plane showing up any time now. You did mention that you have another fellow countryman from also from Portsmouth or wherever how you pronounce it, Mr. Luke A.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing good. As Darren said, the weather's been raining and now it's getting hot, so it's really humid. So if you see me trying to like blow off, that's why it's not great.
Oh man, so no flying today for you guys?
No, I did some flying yesterday, but none today. So
fantastic. Well, at least you got some time in on the sticks. That's cool. Okay, so a little bit of history here. The INAV Fixed Wing Group started back in December of 2018. And I thought it would really be like about 20, 30 people in the group, and we have a fun time showing videos and maybe answering questions. In the first day, we had about 250 members, and I wanted to go to sleep, and so I needed a moderator. And the thing I figured out was I needed someone who didn't live in the same time zone as me. So I asked my good friend, Mr. Arthur Hendricks, hey, can you help me out with this group? Because I need to go to bed, and people, or 10 people an hour, are wanting to join. So Arthur, how are you doing today?
Well, yes, I'm pretty good. Actually, I'm quite excited.
Fantastic. This is your baby we're going to be talking all about today. So the show's all about you and your plane, and probably we should give a little bit of background about you. You are a guy, I didn't realize this until recently, you're a guy who has a PhD. I guess we have a problem, Mark. Is there something going on?
Yeah, there's some rattling noise. I'm not sure from who it comes. So the person who doesn't hear it is the one who causes it.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's my dog who just walked in here. She's like shaking her head.
No, it's a continuously rattling in the background for some reason.
Huh. Okay. Well, we'll check that out.
Sounds like a snake.
yeah, me and Darren were just muted, so it's neither of us. We're in a clear.
I mean, probably. I'll tell you what. Let me try mute myself and see for a second here. I'm gonna put me on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Someone something from Steve is rattling a little bit.
Okay, so we'll check that out here in a minute. Here, it might be me just scooting around. The thing is, I didn't realize this until recently. Arthur, you have a PhD in microbiology, marine biology.
Yeah, marine biology. I studied social behavior of a specific species of dolphin, the rhesus dolphin, the Campus at the Azores. I studied it for its behavior for 9 years. I lived there for 9 years, so that was a long time ago.
Fantastic. Yeah, so when we started the group, you one of the things you mentioned to me was like, I'm going to be building my own custom planes. That was like in the first month or so. And then we saw you started a page, and there was like 5 of us who were on the page in a Facebook group. And all you were doing was testing these planes. You had the build. Is this we're still having a problem, Mark?
No, everything's fine now.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna hit myself, mute myself in a few seconds here. So, but we're testing the planes out. I mean, I saw you testing, and there was like a precision that is unheard of that was put together. So your emphasis on detail is unmatched by anybody. And I got to be honest, when this thing was being introduced to the group, I'm like, man, we got to get this thing right the first time because I don't want to hear about problems, you know, and so I kept pushing this thing off and off and off till it was like ready to be introduced. So I'm the guy who was dragging the feet on this whole project. But my apologies, man. I guess this is like the plane of the year, and this is something that, I mean, Marc doesn't know how to lie, first of all. So he'll tell you what you think, and you know, if you don't want to hear it, don't ask him because he'll tell you his opinion anyways. But he absolutely loves his plane, so that means a lot. You know, it was kind of like more than anyone else. If Marc likes his plane, I know this is something worthwhile. So Marc's going to give his opinion in a few minutes, but first, I would like you to go over the plane and kind of give us some background on this, Arthur.
Yeah, the idea was to design an airplane that everyone could build and everyone could fly. It was easy to fly. You can use it for different purposes, like long range was important. So it needs to have a huge capacity to hold batteries, any kind of different kind of motors, light motors, more heavier motors. Well, it should not be a big, huge log, how do you call it, log, a heavy, slow-moving object. It should also be flying fast, so you can race with it with the proper setup. Well, that was mainly the idea, and keep it as simple as possible because it's life is pretty complicated enough. So I like to have my planes built, look and fly pretty easy and predictable.
Perfect. So we got to kind of get into this a little bit and let people know that there's a difference between this plane and something like you would order from Vanco that they have a warehouse full of, and like they just pick a box and then put a label on it and ship it to you. This is something completely different. This is a custom foam plane, right?
Yeah. This one is not. I use a machine to cut the wings and to cut the fuselage, but everything is well. In this case, the fuselage is pre-built, so I build it by hand. So everything is pre-made, so that you can go ahead and start building the last paces and get it up in the air as quick as possible. And everything is straight and lined up and 100% perfect. So that was my main thing. It should, well, only perfect is good enough. That's my motto. And I had Chinese planes earlier years ago, and I found out there are how you call it, not failures, but weak spots in the plane, like flight characteristics, build qualities and all that stuff. And I thought, well, it can be better than that. So when I design a plane, I choose the right components. It should be high quality components you can trust and all that stuff. So the quality is good. So you know that it is not the plane's fault or anything else when it comes to unscheduled landings.
Okay, I moved my mic really quick, so hopefully this is a little bit better. I think my mic was too close to the screen, and that might be getting interference. So hopefully, my apologies.
Yeah, sounds better now.
Okay, good. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of go over, and it's like I've gone through this process before of custom foam planes. I've purchased and owned custom foam planes. And I can tell you firsthand what happens is like this is a real custom foam plane in the respect that the wings come in beds. That means the wings are embedded into the big chunk of foam. You'll see that they're cut out inside of that. And it's part of the assembly process of how you put it together. It keeps the wings straight during packaging and shipping. But the one thing I will tell you is when I've ordered custom foam planes before, like, I mean, literally all that shows up are the wings, the beds, and that's it. It comes in a box, no instructions, and then, I mean, literally have to write the guy back and like, where's the CG on this plane? And it's completely up to you to build it. But in this particular plane, we actually have all of the instructions of how to put this plane together. And I really should ask you right away, what size is this plane?
The wingspan is 1,000 millimeters, so 1 meter.
Perfect.
Yeah, and
All up weight for flying.
Sorry?
All up weight, all up weight, or the.
The all up weight. Well, you can build it as light as possible, and to keep it as light, but you can go, you can fly like Marc is flying it at 1,200 grams, and I'm pretty sure it can do even more than that. So
Okay.
if you put bigger Li-ion packs in it with a bigger motor, heavier motor, bigger prop, so you can use 6,000 milliamps on 4S 2-pack. I'm pretty sure you can hold it can hold that. So that it's the wing area is immense. So it has a lot of it can produce a lot of lift.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think the 1,200 grams I have right now is more. There's the lower end of the scale. It won't be possible to make it any lighter because I already have a very small 2212 motor on there and 2,600 mAh battery. So if you want to build it even lighter, then you will get into trouble with the CG.
Yeah, and then the thing also to keep in mind is that aside from the CG, is that this is probably a really nice plane to handle the wind, because if it's much lighter, then it's going to get tossed around in the wind, right?
Yeah. It when it's so light like I have it right now, you still have trouble to get it really stable in gusty situations, or if you fly close to the ground, if it's some kind of windy. When it gets heavier, then of course this will it will fly definitely better. Yeah.
And the other thing we need to point out too is, like, if you go to a hobby store, for example, and you go pick up a Horizon hobby plane, they're great planes. I mean, you can pick them up and they're plug and play. So you just plug in your battery, and then you set your radio up, and then you're off flying. Everything's figured out for you. The CG, everything. And so you don't really have to put a lot of emphasis, a lot of expertise into it. A plane like this, you have so many different directions to go, and that's the fun of it. Is that you can have it be a light build. You can have it be, you can load it up with huge batteries and make this thing stay up for hours at a time and do long range FPV. So even though it's 1 meter and it's essentially similar to a delta wing, even though it looks more like kind of like a dart, they're still swept back wings, not swept forward wings. But this thing is capable of carrying a lot of weight and going a long distance and doing quite a bit. So it is very versatile. And also, as I watched the entire video of Osborne, he just loves this plane, the build quality of it, the foam. He just kept saying that this is just a fantastic plane as far as the build quality is concerned. So tell us about the foam and the build process and how you came about with the idea of this plane.
Sorry, what was the last thing?
How you came up with the idea of this plane. I mean, why this design? This is, instead of being let's look at it. It's kind of similar to a dart in some respects, except the wing is swept back instead of being swept forward, and it has.
I know that delta wings are very. They're not so sensitive for stall, and I thought that was maybe a good starting point to start there. And I didn't want to design a delta wing, but swept back, but close to a delta, and with a middle fin in the middle. That gives it. I think that will give it more stability. So that was the main reason I designed it like it is now.
Okay. Perfect. It is, yeah. And then the foam you're using, is it 1.3 pound foam?
Yeah, I don't know what the Americans the Americans use different
okay, yeah, right.
numbers for the foam. Yeah.
It's one of the denser foam.
Yeah, it's a secret piece of foam. So.
Okay, that's top secret piece of foam.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And then this plane is not available to anyone but people in the INAV fixed wing group, right?
No, you have the discount. The INAV group people can have a discount. It's available in the shop, but there's a huge discount for INAV members.
Perfect. Yeah. So you are like a wing builder. So the last year, you're starting to get a reputation for making really fantastic planes. And this is So is this plane is something as would you recommend for a first-time builder, or is this something that you have to have a few planes under your belt and no INAV before you get this plane?
Well, I think this is a nice plane to start with because the fuselage is pre-built. The only thing you need is to glue the spars in place to the upper and lower part of the wing, and then connect the two wings to the fuselage, and then the fins are or slided in or glued on the winglets, on the wingtips, and yeah, it's a pretty easy build, and you can go. You can how do you say it? It's not big. It's easy for a beginner, but it's very enjoyable for someone who wants to do long range or racing, change setup. It's versatile. Yeah.
Perfect. Very versatile. Okay. Anything else before we get on to Marc? Because Marc wants to talk all about this. I mean, he's like itching to get to this, and we're going to keep talking with you, but is there anything else we should know before we hand it over to Marc?
No, I'm very curious what Marc has to say now. Yeah.
So, we're all interested to hear.
Getting excited. Yeah, yes.
I'm gonna So for the next half hour, you won't be seeing or hearing me anymore. It's just getting more coffee, walking the dog, everything else like that. No, it's just exciting. Marc, I know you've been itching to talk all about this plane, and you've been teasing us a lot about this plane as far as giving information and how much you like it, but take it away.
You know, when I talk too long, I will fall over my own tongue, so don't hesitate to jump in if you want. Yeah, my Raphax is here. I bet no one in the group has yet seen it. Just joking, just kidding. It was my first DIY plane. I never built DIY foam plane for myself. Of course, it was pre-cut. But laminating is pretty new for me. Bezier elevons are new for me with these, how is it called in English? In Germany, we say Stegplatten.
Oh, Corex.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the first time I worked with these Corex plates, and it was still pretty easy to build together. The worst part was waiting for the glue to dry. I already told that to Arthur. It was a nightmare to do a few steps and then just need to wait a whole night until everything is cured. Because I'm a very impatient person, so I want to get things done really fast. Yeah, I built it together. I was really nervous because we still had no final trim settings. We still had no final center of gravity. I got some data from Arthur. Arthur recommended a CG of 125 millimeters from the leading edge of the wing. And yeah, I just guessed a few things. I put my flight controller in there. It's here in the back. And as you can see, I built it a little bit messy at this point. It will be cleaned up later. And you have tons of room. There's absolutely no worry about any space.
I should point out, you got a big hole back there, right?
Yes. I have opened a big hole back there. I will use some leftover Corex to make a bridge here.
Yeah, I got it. Perfect.
To make a bridge there to regain a little bit of the stability, but I'm not too worried because it's really stiff. I'm not worried that this causes any issues. So the reason for that is I have made some custom designed air inlets I have glued on here. So it will press some of the air in the fuselage directly onto the VTX that's here on the side. And then the air will flow through that hole over the ESC and then back out here in the middle where the motor wires are also routed.
All right, so how many amps ESC are you using?
That's a 35 amp ESC, but it's only my temporary maiden setup right now. It's a Sunny Sky X2212 motor with 1400 kV. It's a little bit underpowered. You can't do very hard acrobatics, or you can't go vertical up into the sky yet. But it flies well already.
So would you recommend the Air B then by Razor Star?
Yes and no. This time I won't get the Air B. I will get a T-Motor AS 20 2714. Yes, AS2714. It basically has the same specifications as the ARB, but as it's a ring motor, I'm sure that it can withstand full power all the time. The ARB, if you go to its maximum limits of 45 amps continuous power, it will really get burning hot. So I wanna stay with a real ring motor this time, just to be sure I can go full throttle all the time if I want to.
So, Mark, I'm
Yep.
gonna, as long as we're talking about this, I want to throw it over to Luke and possibly Darren. I just really quickly want to ask. Okay, so we have a plane that we figured out has an all-up weight of about 1.2 kilograms to 1.5 kilograms, and the motors we're talking about, the first one you're talking about, which is the Sunny Sky X2212 V3, which is has a maximum grams of thrust of about 1,200 grams.
Actually, that's the X2212 Mark II. That's the black one.
So it's black.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
the black one. All right. So it has so that thrust is pretty low as far as it's pretty much about the weight of the plane, right? Maximum thrust is about 1.2 grams on that.
Not even with this 7x6 blade. The static thrust is about 1 kilogram.
Okay, so yeah, it's underpowered for the weight of the plane. And then you're talking about going up to a motor that is, like you're talking about running at 45 amps. You're talking about running something that probably does 2 kilograms, I would imagine. I don't know the specs of that motor.
Yeah, the T motor with an 8x6 or 9x6 blade you can use on 4S, depending on the blade shape and a few other things, as long as you don't overcurrent the motor, should bring a thrust of 1.7 to 1.9 kilograms.
Okay, perfect. So, Luke, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the T motor, I believe the one you're actually on about is the AT2317, not 2714.
No, it's the
That was the one you sent me a
AS
link to before.
Oh, then that was the wrong link. It's the
okay.
AS2714. Yeah, it's the biggest.
Okay.
It's the biggest of the AS series with the 16x19 motor mount.
Oh, let me just try and find that then.
Yeah, it has a continuous current for up to 3 minutes of 48 amps, so that should be absolutely fine.
Oh, well, I can't find an AS2714.
Not available in the UK.
Oh, maybe not. But regardless, from those stator sizes and stuff, yeah, it sounds like a good motor for it. 1.6 kilos of thrust sounds pretty reasonable. I'm a big fan of not necessarily having more than 1-to-1 thrust-to-weight ratio if you don't need it. In fact, the 2212 for long range sounds like a really good motor for it if it was at 1.5 kilos or something like that. But yeah, if you want some racing speeds out of it.
So
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, it won't be a high-speed plane, so I don't want to make it like the AR Ring to pass the 200 kilometers per hour mark. Of course, it's not built for that. As Matthew already in his unboxing video told, what he said was that due to the thick ring profile and the strong lifting profile, it's not made for speed. It's really made for stability.
So we have some expertise in the group. Mark is the tree punisher, and Darren is the motor punisher. So no one's killed more motors in this group than Darren has. So Darren, what do you think about all this?
Oh, well, I actually want to see it with the motor that Arthur was teasing us with the other week.
That big well, yes. Yeah.
Oh, what was it? It was. I've just got a picture up. It's a 3548.
Yeah. That's a pretty long one. Let me check.
Yeah, it's huge. But no, I'm well up for overpowering things.
Yeah, right. I think if you want to overpower it, you want to do it properly, and you want to go for something along the lines of Jing 2814.
Oh no, that's too small. 2814.
No,
I don't know. I've had 3 kilowatts through that motor, so that can definitely take some punishment.
I would just go for a badass 2830.
Yeah, maybe.
So the badass motors, I wouldn't mind, but they're so expensive to get over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you really see, if you really have one in your hand, you understand why they are so expensive.
Have you had one then?
Not myself, but a friend of mine just got one for his mini drag, and he said it's a pretty small badass motor, but he said it has so much punch, and if you just have it in your hand, he says it's a total different level of feeling.
Mm.
So Arthur's holding up something right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Well, I found it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty decent motor, yeah, for the Raphax. Yeah, I will put this on the Raphax. I have one lying here, need to be maiden, so maybe I try this one. Yeah.
It looks kind of like a 3536, like the DYS 3536.
I don't know. It's the 3548. Yeah, 900 kV, so big prop.
Wow.
Should be nice.
Okay.
Should be going nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, the Jing 2814. I've just got it up. It can do 2.5 kilos of thrust with the stock setup. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I want to see how much.
And like I say, I've got quite a lot more than that from it. It's a beast of a motor.
All right, so do me a favor. Let's pull up really quick. So we're trying to take a vote here as like what's the best motor for this plane, and so you're saying the Jing 2814. What's that sell for in Banggood?
I think it's around 29 pounds.
Okay, so it's about $35 US.
Yeah,
And-
I guess about that. Yeah.
And then what's the badass motor selling for here in the States?
Oh, they're about 60.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the small ones start at around $50. The smallest one.
Yeah. Well, they're bringing out some smaller ones. I think it's about 2317. It's very similar sort of size to the Sunny Sky 2216. They're bringing out a similar competitive motor quite soon. So that may, I don't know, $30-40, but yeah, they're pricey, but they are very good motors.
So I guess what we're saying then is that you probably want to get a motor that kind of works well with this plane, as far as you want to get something that has some thrust to it, something that can kick up about 1.5 to 2 grams of thrust without a problem.
Yeah, I would suggest if you want it to be a very fast plane, so for racing wing kind of thing, the Jing 2814 with an 8S 1300 milliamp hour battery and iFlight 80 amp PSC. I think that'll give you 5 minutes of exhilarating flying.
Yeah. Oh, I want to see that one. I love
Yeah.
it.
I think that would be a good combination for it. It's still reasonably light. That should come in around, I don't know, 1.3, 1.4 kilos. So.
Perfect. Now, what about? Let's talk about a plane where you feel like I do, where you get up in the sky, you just want to kick back and do relaxed FPV, and you want a good motor with it, something that will get you up to altitude. With and Marc started off with the motor he started off with is the second version of the Sunny Sky X2212, and so the third version of it actually does about 1.5 grams of thrust with a 3S or 4S battery. So that might be something to look at as far as that, but was that enough thrust or something that could do 1.3, 1.4 grams of thrust?
Yeah, the Mark III version of that motor, the blue one, it basically has the same specifications as the black one. The difference is it can withstand more current, so it has better cooling. That's the biggest difference between those two generations.
Okay.
It has better cooling, and the efficiency is slightly higher.
Yeah, I thought they're showing a little bit higher efficiency with the V3.
Yeah, so I have the V3 on.
As far as a little more thrust, I thought it was like 1.3, 1.4 grams of thrust on that motor with an 8x4 prop.
Yeah, I think the thrust is a little bit higher because it can withstand more current right now with the better housing and better cooling. But basically it's not much difference. I just have the blue one on my long range AR ring now on 3S.
So what we're looking at also, this is something that I think a lot of people when we're talking about motors, we overlook this part a lot, which is when you have a motor like the ones we're talking about with the Sunny Sky, they're about 62 grams of weight. And then when you get into, I mentioned ARB, and even though it's not Marc's favorite, that one's up to about 80 grams of weight. And then the ones that Arthur is showing is about 150 grams of weight. So, there's a combination. Will this plane handle the higher weight comfortably, because you need, I guess the battery we're going to use on this is at least a 3S 5200 milliamp battery.
Yeah, right now I use 2600 4S batteries, and I really that's a 2200 right now, but it's the same size basically, and I really have to put it up in the front here, really on the foam here in the front to get the CG right with that light, even with that light motor. So it's really recommended to use a bigger battery in that plane.
So on 3S, to make this plane fly in 3S, what kind of motor are we talking about?
You can still use the 1400 kV motor, and then just use a 8 or 9 inch prop on there. That should work.
And we'll take a 9-inch prop without doing flipping over like the HD wing does, where it has the torque rules as you take off.
No, absolutely no problem. So the control surfaces on the Raphax are so big, they are completely over the whole ring span, and you don't feel any torque roll if it goes full throttle. I mean, it's still a pretty weak motor, but I don't expect a big difference when I put a stronger motor in there.
Okay, so far you've only played with the Sunny Sky motor on this plane? Yeah,
just the 2212 right now. Starting is really easy, a piece of cake. I just grab it on the nose and I guide it up a little bit into the air, and it will completely stabilize by itself. I used auto launch and the mini drag preset of INAV, and it flew just well.
All right, so Arthur, this plane comes with 3 different motor mounts, right?
Yes, what is it? The 1616 or 1916, 1925, and the 1919. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't come with the 1616, so it would work with the Air B, right?
The Air B has
2 of the 16s.
I think the Air B has a 1919.
That's a 1919.
I have the 1916, the 1919, and 1925.
Yeah, we made the 1919 just for the Air B. That was my idea.
Oh, that's it. I love it. Okay, that's sold, because that is, that motor is actually a great motor. I know, and it's, I mean, occasionally you can find that thing on sale for $12 to $15 US on Banggood. So that is just, highly rated motor. But I know Mark wants a little bit more out of it than that. So you're looking at something a little bit better from Racer Star. But I'm trying to figure out what I can realistically start off with 3S. I think that there's a lot of people in the group who will be like, when you look at the cost of this thing, and you start at how much it costs to acquire the plane, to drop another $60 on a motor just isn't feasible. But if you can drop $20, $25 on a motor, that's something that's a little bit more doable. So what can you do? And also, the other thing we haven't mentioned yet is the battery. So a lot of people might not have the 3S 5200 milliamp or 4S 4000 milliamp or whatever it ideally takes, but they can get their hands on 2 3S 2200 milliamp. Those things are a dime a dozen, and you run those in parallel.
I'd say for a really good long range setup for a beginner, something like the Air B 2514 on 3S with, say, 9x8 prop or a 9x7 prop, and that would be 2 or maybe even 3 2200 3S's in parallel. I think that would work out pretty good.
Wow, sounds fantastic. So when you're ordering your stuff from Banggood, be sure they do sell, or even Hobby King sells, the parallel. I have not seen a 3 parallel. I've only seen 2 parallel setups.
Oh yeah, I just normally make up my own leads, or you even just like solder that directly onto the board. But I guess if you're ordering one, you might have to do two.
You can make them up yourself. Just be really careful to follow a diagram and make sure you get this right, because it doesn't go together the way you think it should go together. And there's also, if you get it wrong, you can also run them in series instead of parallel, and put a lot more juice through the battery, to the motor. So, Darren, what do you have in mind for this plane?
Well, I don't know. To me, it looks fast. I quite like the idea of it going fast. So, when Luke mentioned 8S, and the 2814. That actually sounds really good to me.
I think the 8S on a 2814 would be a really, really nice plane.
You're in the eight number. Yeah, I have a T-motor. What is it? The AS 2814 2000 kV lying ready for the maiden. So I'm looking forward how that will go. Should going fast. I have one motor on the Wukon, and that one is well, it's getting the 200 kilometers an hour, so the top speed. So it should do the trick on the Raphax.
Sounds good. The one question I do have, so the motors, after we get done with the motors, we need to talk about ESCs and figure out what kind of ESC would be great for this. This should be like a one-time purchase, and it should just be one ESC for this plane. So, and that really shouldn't take too much time to cover that. Mark, what are you thinking as far as an ESC for this plane?
Yeah, for the AS2317 T-motor, I have selected a 60 amp Hobby Ring Skywalker ESC, just because it's cheap and 60 amp will be more than enough for that motor.
Okay, so you're talking about a linear motor, not a BH heli motor, then, right?
No, that's a complete that's a plain ESC, just with standard protocol, no fancy stuff.
The back, yeah.
Does it have the third on the it has a Beck built in?
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
But
right.
I won't use it, of course.
Right. So Luke, what do you think? What would you put on this?
Oh, yeah, I definitely wouldn't go for a plain ESC. I'd go for a BL Heli 32 ESC, and I'd either go for a Teco 32 metal 65 amp ESC, or if I wanted to go the 8S route with the 2814 motor, I'd put the iFlight 80 amp ESC on it. I'm quite a big fan of that ESC.
Well, okay. So the first one you said is a Teco?
Yes, that's a Holybro Teco 32.
That's the one I have on my high-speed AR ring.
Yeah, that's the one that I have on my record plane. So, yeah, big fan of it, that as well.
So what's the price range on that? It sounds like
I believe that's 16, 17 pounds, so $22, $23, $24.
Oh, God, okay, that's cheap. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as
and of course, it doesn't have a BEC, but you don't want to use the BEC in the ESC anyway, so...
So when we're telling people to build this plane and, suggesting, hey, why don't you put a few more dollars instead of buying the $8 ESC, why don't you put $25 into an ESC and get something that you'll never have to replace or rarely have to replace? Can they start off with a weak setup with a 3S on this that's running 30 amps with the motor? There shouldn't be a problem with that ESC handling it.
No, you can put whatever ESC you want as long as it's big enough. You can go out and get an APD 200 amp 12S ESC if you want, like if that's your ambitions for the plane.
No, I'm just asking if you have a heavier duty ESC like this, can you run it on 3S?
Yeah, definitely. I don't believe there are really any ESCs that won't want to run on 3S. So
okay, perfect.
In terms of going bigger, not going smaller.
Right.
So you could use that 200 amp ESC and 12S on a Sunny Sky motor, then you can get rid of the LEDs on the back because the motor will shine.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest? So we suggest this, like, get yourself a good ESC from the start and don't think about it ever again. Something like the Holybro ESC.
I would generally recommend getting a good ESC for the motor rather than a good ESC for the plane, because you're always going to have that motor and ESC combo. Whereas, if you want to go to a better motor, you can get a new ESC as well, and the old motor and ESC combo can go in a new plane or an old plane, whatever else. So yeah, if you wanted to future-proof the ESC for the plane, then you'd have to go something like the iFlight 80 amp ESC, and that's $40 nearly. So, yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, so you're saying buy the ESC, keep it together with the motor.
Yeah, I mean, even that doesn't work perfectly because in some situations the ESC may have to change while still using the same motor. But as a good rule, yeah, keep the ESC with the motor.
You know, and I know we're spending a lot of time on the whole powertrain setup for this plane, but that pretty much will make or break it for this plane for you. Is if it's something that's too light, too weak, you're not going to enjoy the plane as much, and if it's overpowered, you'll be scared to death of the plane. I mean, except for Darren. But
yeah, I remember when you said you launched your AR ring on 4S with the RB motor.
Oh God!
Oh no! You even started it on 3S, and you were scared.
Yeah, the thing weighed a metric ton, and then you put it up in the air, and it was like, I mean, literally up to cruising altitude in about 20 seconds, and I was up there cruising around with it, and I'm like, I got to bring this thing down, and it's pretty damn heavy, and so I don't have the biggest place to land this at, so it's not like I could bring it in for half kilometer away and watch it kind of come down. I had to get over trees, and yeah, it was a little bit of a challenge. So I remembered I was shaking, and I got it, unplugged it, and I was like, I'm taking this motor off. I'm done with this. I can't do this combination. This is too much.
If you say that it was about 20 seconds to your cruising altitude, for us it sounds like your cruising altitude is 3,000 feet or so.
Yeah, I mean, these are what we're getting now. When you think about this, is that we have some absolutely spectacular motors available, thanks to our bros who fly quads. I mean, the efficiency of these motors, and it's just unbelievable what you can get for $20, $30. I mean, you talk to guys who've been in the hobby since the 1970s, and they're like telling you how they had to like give up their summer vacations so they can afford the $500 engine as opposed to the $200 engine for their plane, because that's how much it meant to them. And now we're like talking like, oh, like $30 is a lot of money. Wow, it was $60. Don't have that much money. But you know what you can get for under $60 is absolutely phenomenal, except for Luke, because Luke likes the $200 and up motors.
Well, I don't own any $200 and up motors. I like the cheap ones that you can burn up without feeling too bad about.
I think you talk about the Hacker. I was like, that was like the motor. I mean, what would be the ideal motor setup for this plane for you? You said the Jing 2814.
Yeah, the Jing 2814. I think that would be a really good motor for it.
Okay.
And if you wanted to go really crazy, which I've not had the plane in my hands. I'm not sure if it'd take it. Maybe filled it with carbon, but then it would be the Jing 5215 with the APD 120 MPSC. That's probably where I'd go for. That's if you want to push, 300 kilometers per hour, maybe 350. So.
But then we're talking about an ESC that's basically the cost of the kit as well.
Oh yeah, a bit more maybe even. This is the APD 120 amp is about $130, I believe. So, yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
yeah,
my 60 amp Skywalker was about $20 or 20 euros.
Yeah, I've been doing some testing with them. I can get them out. They are very, very nice ESCs.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very nice.
Yeah. That's so you're the cheap ones, because I know there's some like 35 amp. The ones like the really cheap ones for like $8 on Banggood. Those are the ones I would stay away from on this plane, because you're putting some money into it. Put some a little nicer onto it is what you're saying. Spend the $20, $25. Get yourself like a good Holly Bro if you can afford it. Teco. Okay.
Yeah, the biggest problem you'll have with the cheaper ESCs is noise in the video and that kind of thing. So it's just saves a lot of hassle having to sort that all out otherwise.
But that's a good point for ring ESCs, because ring ESCs by design have very big capacitors integrated already. You don't have them on quad ESCs.
Yeah, but normally when you buy quad ESCs, they do come with the capacitors in the bag that you just solder onto them. So as long as you remember to do that, it should be fine.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So the thing we should point out about the wing ESC, though, is like you might be tempted to take the 5 volts off of the wing ESC and use it for your servos. And that might not be the greatest idea, because they only put out about 1 amp For this
Yeah,
plane,
and
I'll get away with it, but
it depends on the ESC. Like some really good wing ESCs will have a high current one, but even then, I only tend to use it for maybe some LEDs or something like that. I don't like using it for anything too much.
that's what I was going to suggest. Just use it for LEDs on the plane, and because if it drops, they'll just get less bright. And let's be honest, LEDs, once you get the plane up in the air, you won't see them again anyway. So unless you're flying at night.
I did a nice quad chase with the Raphax today, and the LEDs looked really pretty well. They look really
Are
nice.
they the ones that are mounted facing in towards the prop?
Yeah, exactly here on the back of the plane.
Yeah.
And they are really bright, so Arthur has put them for me into the kit. Do you include them in the normal kit too?
No, there's not especially for you, my friend.
Ah, thank you. So, but
I made the what is it called, the space for it in the mount. I prepared it already, so
yeah. So you should
people can put the diatone that size into the mount.
Yeah, you should really link them in the store maybe, because they are really, really bright. So even at daylight, there are no issues to see them from the ground.
Yeah, cool.
Fantastic. Batteries for this plane. Now, Luke has put up the idea of the 8S battery for this plane, which is, that's insane. But realistically, what the weight on this is about, Arthur, you're saying what's the weight range on this?
The weight range, I didn't pump it all full, but start from Marc from 1200 up to what you want.
I think with my final setup and the 5200 4S battery, it will rate about 1.5 or 1550 grams.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, that's a nice weight for that plane. That's a nice one. Yeah.
I think the battery range, the 2600s really are a slight bit too light, so I have to go very, very far front. I even added 20 grams into the nose additionally to get the CG right. And I think between 3000 4S and let's say 300 grams and 600 grams, in that area the battery rate should be.
Yeah.
To have a nice balance.
So like a 4S 4 amp battery would be pretty good for this plane?
Yeah, 4S 4000 milliamp hours as a mid-range to 5200. That's what Matt likes really, because he said every plane you can put a 5200 in it is a good plane.
So that's going to have some weight behind it then. All right, so what about putting in lithium-ion batteries? And this is something that Lucas specializes in. What would you do with a lithium-ion setup for this?
For a lithium-ion setup, I'd probably go for either 3S 4P pack, so that's 12 cells, or maybe a 4S 3P pack, which I guess is 12 cells again, but just in a different configuration if you want a little more power. Yeah, I think that'd be quite good for it. About the right weight range.
So with if you're making a long range FPV, then what kind of motor would you put with that? Because then we're talking about the batteries, now to work backwards, the motor in ESC.
Yeah, so if I wanted to build this out as a good long range plane, kind of no expense spared kind of thing, I'd go for the Jing 2814, the 800 kV version or the 880 or whatever, a 9x7 prop, maybe even a 9x8. Then I'd go for the Teco 32 metal 65 amp ESC, and I'd go for a 3S 4P Samsung 35E lithium ion pack, and I'd suspect that should get an hour and a half of flight time, something along those lines, maybe even a bit.
Wow.
And those are the 18650 cells, huh?
Yeah. Sorry, I should have said that a bit more clearly. So that's 18650 cells, and the particular ones are Samsung 35Es. So they have 3,500 milliamp hour capacity with a 10 amp discharge rate.
Yeah.
So in total, you'd have a 40 amp discharge rate.
So what kind of speed, if you're talking about being up the air for 90 minutes, what's the cruising speed on this, and how far do you think you could realistically fly this?
I don't know that. I guess going back from the prop, if I'm judging that kind of thing right, that would be about a 40 mile an hour cruising speed.
Okay.
But Arthur's probably a better person to ask for that.
Yeah,
so
I
if
did.
it weighed 1.6 kilos, what would it fly at?
Yeah, actually I don't know because I didn't flew it with a flight control in, so I have no idea what the speed. I couldn't measure it, but Mark could give an approximate speed for cruising.
Yeah, so the stall speed with my rate right now is about 35 to 40 kilometers per hour, and everything below 70. Oh, sorry for the. I hope it's not too loud right now. Most stability you get above 70 kilometers per hour. So between 50 and 70, it flies well. For long range, that's totally fine. But you really need a little bit more speed to get your stability on that plane. So 70 to 80, I think it's a very, very good sweet point.
70 to 80 kilometers?
Yeah.
Round trip? Okay. Yeah. So you can take it 35 kilometers out and bring it back?
Yeah, for landing, as I said, it stores at about 35, but actually it just flares. It really just flares.
Hovers at 35. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a little shot from today. It was my crash I made today with the Raphax, so I have the onboard footage of that. Let me just share my screen in Skype 2 so you can see that. Give me a second. Here we go, and then I can also share it in the stream. So this was the point. The reason why I crashed was I had the plane into position hold mode, so it was just loitering all the time to make a chase with my quad, and I had two radios with me, one for the quad, the other one for the Raphax. And then I wanted to switch back to the Raphax just to come in and land. And what I accidentally did is I lowered the throttle to 0. And I have motor stop NAV override active, so the motor just stopped, and I didn't realize that. And at this point, I put my goggles on. Yeah, I just saw the tree and the impact. So actually, at this point, now the motor turned off. It was completely off. INAV tried to keep the altitude, but the plane was stalling or flaring all the time, but INAV had full control all the time. It was a little bit wriggly, as you see, because it was very slow. It was between 30 and 40 kilometers per hour, but it just did never lose control. So, and at the end, yeah, this was the impact in the tree. It fell down a few branches, and at the end, we had to climb up a little bit and push it down, so it fall a few meters onto the ground. But everything went fine. So as you can see, even with no power and INAV trying to keep the altitude and pulling up the pitch, it just doesn't fall from the sky. It's absolutely stable.
It's just auto land.
Yeah, it's just like Autoland, yeah.
Cool.
You're still screen sharing, Marc.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Whee! Okay. Fantastic. Okay, cool. So, all right. So, Marc, anything else about the build you would like to go over?
Yes, a little hint. For the elevons, I have just put on the plain elevons as they came, just laminated them and cut the ends to have some movement here, or just some freedom here. But author has created a little template. You will put it on the website, right?
Yes, I will. I will after tonight. I will put it on the website and in the group. Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone can download the Elevon template where you can cut down a special shape that's a little bit more efficient and cut down your Elevons as you want, but it still flies well with these ones. So I'm not sure if I will change that later on. What else? Yes, I marked my CG points at 130 millimeters here with just two little M2 screws I glued in here to have nice points to grab on. At one point, I did not follow the manual, as Arthur said to me. What I like to do is put the servo push rods in a right angle to the hinge of the elevons, just to make sure that there is no tension in here when they move up and down. Some people say it's bad for the airflow, but in my opinion, I think it doesn't. It's more important to have less resistance here on the flaps than to have a tiny bit more airflow. And
So
yep.
Point I want to bring up really quick is Matt, when he did the build video, I don't know if you watched the whole thing. He was talking about the overview, the unboxing. He made a point to make sure that people put the servos on top instead of on the bottom. Might
Yes.
not look as pretty, but he figured that you'd get more strength out of the servos if you were to use them on top instead of bottom.
I agree with that, but there's probably an even bigger reason, which is if you have them on the bottom, you're probably going to destroy your servos every time you come into land.
That's right.
Well, the fuselage, if you look at that, the fuselage is lower than the
maybe.
wing. So if your wingtips hit the ground, your servos have still some freedom here. I think that's not a big problem at all. But I'm not sure about the aerodynamics. But yes, that's absolutely true. If you need to pull up from a dive and you have some, or you have two thin push rods on here, they can flex. So you always can pull up. They just can flex if you try to push down the plane too much, but don't worry, these push rods won't flex at all. they are so thick. I have no doubt that they will keep up.
Fantastic. Okay, so and then so you can put different kinds of elevons on there if you have balsa wood. You get balsa wood fairly cheap here, and you have the templates for that. So what is that, like a 3mm balsa wood for these? Is what you're using?
It's 40 by 10, yeah.
Okay.
So it's already in a triangle shape, so you don't have to sand them down manually.
Yeah, it has that shape already, yeah. The only thing you do with the template makes the cutting the outline easier. That's all what it does.
Before I forget, I should really point out that we're trying to get this out as quickly as possible. So everyone's building these, and they're white. So they're the stock white color. But you can actually paint this, and it's EPP foam, so you can put spray paint directly on it. It will not eat the foam up, right? If you were to spray paint.
Yeah. You can almost paint it with any kind of spray paint. But we advise to first test your paint. If it holds, it holds. But yeah, I didn't find any spray paint that eats the EPP. So, but always test before you spray it completely. Yeah.
Okay, right. So when you look at this plane, there's some real naturals. You can have the wings be one color, you can have the fuselage be a different color, and you have the winglet and the tail be a third color.
Yeah,
so
it's all up to you. Yeah.
You can make this look really cool. So that's part of the thing we're excited about seeing about this, because this is a group build. Yeah. What people are going to do, because it comes with lamination. So whatever you do, you laminate it over the top of it. So it's not like the paint's going to rub off when it lands.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fully protected.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So that's kind of you can do all one color, two color, three color, depending on what you want to do with this.
Yeah, it's all up to you. Use your creativity, and I love to see all those different Raphaxes in the community. Would be nice with the different setups. Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so that's how you say it's Raphax?
Raphax, yeah.
It's a Raphax. So this is named after a bird, so it's a prehistoric bird?
Yeah, some kind of prehistoric birds. I mangled the word a little bit so that it sounds good. But yeah, it's all the names, the Nemec, the Wukon, all those airplanes we have in the shop are all named after prehistoric birds. Yeah.
All right, and as long as I'm talking, I should kind of go over this. The whole idea about why we came up with this plane in the first place is because when we were putting the website together, we were like going over group builds. Marc was going over, here's the AR wing, and I had a build for an AR wing, and Arthur's like, I got planes too, and why don't you like do a build on one of my planes? And I said, okay, fantastic. Why don't we make it just be a group build, something that you put out for the group? And I thought he wouldn't really take it seriously, but a week later he had a design all ready to go. So this is kind of, it comes with the group. It was really designed for the group in mind, and I guess you include a decal for the group as well?
Group,
I know.
yeah. I don't have it here to show, but it's in the kit. When you buy it, it's all in the kit. It's a nice, designed by Mr. Darren. So.
Hey, Darren. Just really quickly, I wanted to. This is a good point. When we came up to the decals, we had about a 2-week conversation about decals, and the problem we have with decals is that what size do you have? I mean, do you want one big so that you can see it on your 2-meter wing, or that'll be the size of your entire plane if you're building the little 250G dart? So, Darren, you have an announcement this morning, don't you, when it comes to decals?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we had in the actual INAV fixed wing group itself was people were asking for stickers. They saw the logo, they liked it. So what we've actually done is put the files on the website now. So we aren't actually making stickers and selling them, but what we have done is put the files on the website so you can take them to a sign company or someone like that local, and they'll be able to take that design and make the stickers for you. All the hard work is done for them, so it should be as cheap as possible.
You can order these on eBay. You just upload the file to them and they'll print them for you, right?
Yeah, there are probably people on eBay that do it. I mean, for my day job, I'm actually a sign maker, so I've done the files so that they're as simple as possible for the people at the other end. So it'll be really straightforward if you take them the artwork and say, I want one this big, they'll make it for you. They're all fully scalable without losing quality. So you could have one the size of a house, or you could have one, 50 millimeters to go on a small lightweight plane.
Do you have also a solid color one? Because I know it's a 2-color typically is what you're using, but like for example, when you order them on eBay, the way I like is just where they're solid white, and you put those over something that's painted so it really stands out.
It doesn't really matter. The file that's on the website is 2-color, so it's the blue and the dark gray, which is the INAV colors. But if you take it to someone, they can do it in any colors you want. To change the color on the actual graphic would take them seconds.
Okay.
They just import it, change the color, and it's done. And they can print it or plot it, whatever material they're going to use.
So it could be as big as you want it to be, as small. What kind of file format is EPS?
There's a PNG file, which is a standard graphic file, which is transparent. So that's more a digital medium, and some printers, if you say T-shirts and stuff like that, prefer that sort of file. And then there's 3 different formats of vector file. So no matter what they're using, they'll be able to use one of them at least. So there's SVG, which is a scalable vector graphic. There's the DXF, which is AutoCAD. And there's also a PDF, which pretty much anyone should be able to open a PDF. They're all vector, so fully scalable.
I would love to give out decals in the group. Then the problem is we'd have no idea which size. There would be all sorts of different sizes would be need. Also, the nice thing about the group is we make absolutely no money. So we have no budget to pay for decals and send it to people. So this is a hobby, and it's run by enthusiasts and everything else like that. And that's what's cool about this plane, is that it is an enthusiast-based plane. It's just kind of Arthur is an enthusiast, so it's not like I think, and this is part of the thing that a lot of people have an issue with. And we actually had some conversations with people who make planes, and they kind of led on to the secret, which I was kind of wondering about for a very long time now, which is why do you order these Chinese planes and it looks promising, and then it just, when you fly them, you feel like the wings aren't long enough. Maybe if it was another 100 millimeters longer on each wing, this thing would be amazing. And it turns out that there's an actual size that if you go over a size in shipping, the thing gets phenomenally more expensive. So that is a real concern. I think, we're trying to keep these kits as cheap as possible. What it means is that sometimes you end up with these planes which you think are going to be wonderful, and they're not so great. Whereas when we're putting this thing together, when you look at the cost of this kit, and this is something that you're trying to keep in mind. I mean, I know we tell everyone to start off with an AR wing. They're $50 to $80, depending where you buy them at. But when you get up to something where you know, by the time you look at what you can put into a plane, by the time you start talking the flight controllers and all the cameras you can put in there, you're easily dropping $150 to $200 on really good quality gear. So saving $50 on a plane isn't really going to do much for you, especially if something you're going to fly over and over and over again and really love. And there are some planes that are shelf planes, and there are some planes you're going to love. And this one is going to be one you're absolutely going to love. And everyone's like stunned, like that's wisdom. I don't know.
Yeah, it's absolutely
enjoying the story, Steve.
It's absolutely true. I mean, just take the example. I have an long range AR wing and an Talon GT as a long range plane. So in my AR wing, I have an F405 flight controller. I have an Sunny Sky motor, not the cheapest one, the X2212 Mark III. It's what's the price? 28 euros or so, just for the motor. I have a DYS ESC in there. That's also not the cheapest one. And if I just add everything up and compare it with the Talon GT, the price difference is about 70 euros, roundabout. Even that the Talon GT costs double or more than double the price of the AR wing. It's just 60 or 70 euros difference at the end. So even my long range AR wing costs me about 220, 230 euros or so.
Yeah, that's right. So you don't really, the cost of the foam itself isn't really like, I know when you sit and you look at only this and you say, well, I've got this plane I can get for 60 euros and I've got this other plane I can get, the group plane is like 120 euros. And it seems like, oh my gosh, that's a whole lot more money. In reality is like, by the time you add it up and you figure out how much, and this is one thing I think people don't understand about the hobby. It's expensive, but it's also cheap. When you think about it, it's like it's an expensive hobby in the respect that the stuff, these planes cost a lot of money. If you lose one, it's a lot of money that you lost. But the reality is the hours of fun you have in this, if you figure out how much it costs you per hour versus going to the movies or something else like that, it is one of the cheapest hobbies around.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, if I go flying for hours, I've spent so many hours in the air right now, and I have planes, let's say, worth 1,200 to 1,500 euros. Other people buying a car or buying motorcycles, I think that's much more expensive than with less fun time, at least if you end in the hospital. But anyway, there are some questions in the chat right now. Grinder asks, Luke, would you glue a heatsink on the APD 120 amp ESC?
Sorry, what's that? Would I?
Would you?
Well, that depends a lot on what you're doing with it. If you're putting 120 amps through it consistently, then yeah, I'd say definitely a heatsink, preferably get in some good airflow. Particularly if you're going to be flying it at 75% throttle or somewhere like that, where it's really hard on the ESC for a long amount of time. If you know that you're either going to be no power at all or 100%, it's not so bad on it. So yeah, depends. Generally, you shouldn't have to put a heatsink on an ESC. I think is a good rule. If you do, it's probably not the best ESC ever. But if you want to push an ESC, that's a good way to get around it.
I guess Darren has something.
Just to confirm, Glenn's asked in the chat if 19 by 25 hole spacing motor mount is available for it. I'm sure I said it was, but just to confirm.
90 by 25. We have the 90 by 25, 1919. Yeah.
That's a yes. Okay. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, so we've gone over the whole build process.
And the whole thing is on the website. You can choose your size, motor mount size. You can choose for the 1960, 1990, 1925. So then we will know what mount we will pack into the kit. And the other thing is, I've got the idea to put all the mounts on the group page, so they're free to download. So when somebody's changing the motor and the mounts the mount holes won't fit, they can choose another one and print them themselves.
Speaking,
sorry, I was just going to say, the motor mount that you provide, it looks like it's two parts. So you just unbolt the part the motor sits on and replace that.
Yeah, there's one motor plate. The plate, you glue the plate on the back of the fuselage, and the motor mount fits. All those three sizes fits on that same plate.
yeah. Speaking of the motor mounts, can you tell us something about the material you use for printing?
Yeah, well, I only used the good stuff. I tried a lot of cheaper stuff, but this is the industrial PLA, the X3 PLA.
Have you not had any problems with the PLA melting or anything?
No, not at all. I tried it, and what I add in the kit some 4 silicone rings. They come between the motor and the motor mount, and that helps. That helps the motor mount, but. I tried it with the motor. Marc tried it, and there was hardly any change in structure. But I have no idea what motors people put on it. Maybe some motors will become hot, and those silicone rings will help to protect the motor mount.
Yeah, certainly if you're putting a 2814 on it on ATES,
on ATES,
you may want to reprint the motor mount in polycarbonate or something. Yeah. That's what I do most of my motor mounts in now. Makes it a lot more heat resistant.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to really go nuts with the Raphax, you can still use the STL, send them to some printing company or printing service, and let them make some kind of laser sintering that's completely heat resistant.
Yeah.
It will be expensive, of course, but I think if you will put a $100 motor on there, I think you can also use a good motor mount.
Yeah, I mean, I've taken polycarbonate to some very, very high temperatures with motors. That's what my world record plane uses, and yeah, it can easily handle 200 degrees before you have to worry about melting. So
yeah, cool. Sounds good.
Probably cheaper than sending it off to get laser sintered.
Yeah.
Is that 200 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit?
Celsius.
Oh wow. Okay, so it's really.
Yeah, I think its glass transition temperature is actually about 170, but the core of the motor is hotter than the back plate or whatever. So, yeah.
There's one German guy in the group who printed me a motor mount for my long range AR ring that is actually laser sintered from a material where they usually make prosthesis out of. So if you lose finger or arms or whatever, this material where they make the prosthesis out of, that's the material I have as a motor mount on my AR ring right now. So it also should withstand much more than 200 degrees Celsius. I think the motor will burn up before the motor mount gives up.
So we've gone over the fact that this is a 1,000 millimeter wing span plane, and that it is a group build as far as the original concept was for something that for the INAV group. We've gone over the different power setups you can possibly use with this plane. We've talked about the batteries you can use with the plane. We've talked about the build process. Marc, before we leave the build process, is there anything else we should know? He's muted. Wait, there you go. You're here now. Marc?
Yeah. That muting tool is sometimes a little bit bitchy. No, but there's really nothing special. I used a lot of glue, maybe more than I need to, but I want to make sure, like the fiberglass strips here, to glue them in. So Arthur has put a bottle of this Gorilla Glue you already have seen in Matt's video, and I used half the bottle for the plane. So it's really stable, and as you can see that now that it's fully built up with the spars glued in, really nice. So I just hold the plane here on the ring tip, I let it go. There's no flex at all.
Wow.
It's like steel. It's amazing. So
you put in quality stuff. Everything in there, like the metal screw down things, are quality material as well. And I guess those are metal alloys. I guess that's one thing that Matt pointed out.
Yeah.
Yeah, these screws. Let me show the people. The screws here are made of alloxide aluminum.
Yeah.
And there are even brass inserts where they screw into. And if you use a good amount of glue there, they keep up really well. It's
Yeah,
a perfect fit.
because high quality stuff that makes you enjoy flying longer than cheap stuff. You don't want to have some part breaking off during flight, so everything should be high quality. That's what I stand for.
So this is a quality kit, and Darren has a question and comments. Yes.
Yeah. First of all, I was just going to ask Mark, how easy or difficult is it compared to building something from China, say like an AR wing? How is the build process in comparison to that?
Okay.
Sorry.
Are you asking me or Arthur?
I was asking Mark.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so for me,
Arthur.
for me, it's more difficult, like as an AR wing, of course, because you have to glue stuff. For the AR wing, you usually don't need to if you put everything in the compartment. You have to laminate. I don't have special tools. I use the normal ironware I usually use for cloths. And but it worked well. So if you really follow the manual and you do what's written in the manual, there are tons of videos out there that describe how you laminate a ring or how you laminate EPP foam. It's pretty easy. So it took me about 3 days, and most of the time was waiting for the glue to cure. Yeah, that was not a big problem.
So Arthur,
maybe sort of the AR wing moment. I mean, the S800, for example, you're still gluing in spars and stuff like that. So maybe the build's a lot more similar to something like that. So it does. All I'm getting at is it doesn't sound like a particularly challenging build, especially seeing as Arthur's building the fuselage and everything ready to go.
I mean, if you want to go more advanced, like let's say you want to put the VTX and the receiver in the rings instead of the main fuselage, just to get less interferences, it will get more complicated, because then you need to think about where you drill the holes. Because don't forget, in the fuselage, you have these plywood walls on the side that go from the tip to the back, all the way up. And that's one mistake I did here for the servo wires. I didn't think of that. So what I actually did is I used a hot cut tool to just burn up the wood to make the wood completely black, and then I was able to poke through there with a screwdriver to get some holes in the wood, and I was able to put the wires in there. So you have to be aware of that you don't forget to drill holes before you glue on the rings.
So compared to a mini Talon, where that's like a project that takes weeks to put together, the only one who knows about that plane is Darren in the group here.
I still haven't really started my mini Talon. It's in the box. I think it's taking me so long because I can't decide on what parts I want to use for it. I mean, as far as separation goes, I pretty much do that with everything. And with the F1 that I've got up there, actually, that's the one I didn't actually do the separation on, but that's also got plywood in the sides. But yeah, getting a drill through with the angle might be a bit of a challenge, but it's still nothing overly complicated. I mean, the build is going to be more similar, I guess, to something like a mini Drac or a Vortigaunt, or something else that's custom. But I think it's going to be easier than those models, especially the Vorti. I mean, the fuselage is already built, so it's just wings pretty much.
So as long as we're on this topic, I'm sorry, on this topic, why don't we, because I think a lot of people are going to start to put together 3D prints for certain things. That was the whole thing about the mini Talon, is that there's a lot of 3D prints you can get and download from Thingiverse, which are really cool, and then make the plane something more than it is. So on our website, is this something that maybe we can add people's 3D print files for this plane, for ideas that they have?
Yeah, I mean, with the mini Talon, there's one guy particular, Marc, I think his name's Cuvell. Sorry.
Yeah, Marc Cuvell does loads of great stuff.
Yeah, his stuff is top notch. He did stuff for the C1 Chaser as well. So, but everything is really well thought out. And if you get to that level of detail, then yeah, 100% share it. But yeah, I mean, Thingiverse is a good repository anyway. But
maybe just links to Thingiverse. Yeah. Sorry, you were just about to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no reason why we couldn't have, you know, or even maybe the better place for it is actually on the Stealthwings website itself with the Raphax. So links to, you know, the better enhancements for it, like Marc's air vents that he's got either side.
That's kind of what the whole point of this plane is. Like, it is a community kind of plane, so that when people come along with an idea, and even though it might not be the greatest idea in the world, or you think like, oh, this, no one will really care about it, maybe it's something that's really cool and you share it and people will love it. For example, if you build a custom GPS module holder for the plane or something like that, and maybe it's something simple, but put it out there.
I do agree with that 100%. If you've got 3D printers, share them. But also, I strongly recommend people getting on Tinkercad or Fusion 360 and designing their own prints. It's really good, easy to get into, a lot of fun.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Fusion 360 is free and it's quite easy to learn. I mean, I did one this afternoon. The little power button fell off my Fat Sharks yesterday while I was hunting for my mini AR wing. So today I just drew up a new one, printed it, and it's on there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have 4 3D prints at the moment downstairs, and they're all printing things. So.
Wow.
So
and a laser cutter over here, if that counts.
So my next plan is, I tried to do that before I got the Raphax, but I really want to have the rear one to measure it. At the moment, I have this temporary mount, let's call it a mount, for my Runcam 2 and my FPV camera. And what I want to do is to make different nose adapters or different noses. So I just need to cut out the part between the wooden plates and just replace that one. So you can use a hot wire or whatever, or a sharp knife, to just cut directly in front of the top hatch of the battery hatch, and just replace that whole middle part to have something like a Runcam 2 style or Mobius style camera in there with a FPV camera or a session style mount. You could even fit a GoPro in there, but then you have to think about where to put your FPV camera, because the GoPro uses nearly the full width of there. And yeah, of course, if I finish one of these mounts, I will publish that on Thingiverse anyway.
Yeah. Wait, someone in the chat earlier.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, someone in the chat earlier mentions the DJI camera.
Awesome.
A 3D printed mount for that with some air intakes would be ideal, and there's plenty of room for it in that nose.
Yeah.
So
you could.
I mean, there's all sorts.
You could even use the same style like I did for the Runcam 2 right now. So I want to do that way. So you have the DJI camera on one side, at the let's say the Calyx Vista or the air unit on the other side, with some room above, so the air can actually go in the fuselage from the camera. And if Arthur then makes the holes, the openings in the middle parts here of the foam, for the final design, the air can go through the whole fuselage and then out of the back, for example.
Yeah,
that's no problem to get a DJI unit in there too.
Fantastic. So we would recommend, if you have video, you can share with us a flight video of you flying this with the Runcam.
Yeah, of course. Wait a second.
I think the crash was from the Runcam earlier.
Yeah, the crash was from the Runcam today. I have the flight videos from the last flight on YouTube, because today I didn't some fancy stuff after the crash. I didn't fly again because the battery mount ripped out. And I have to repair that first. But yeah, on my channel there are some videos. I will put the links in the chat.
All right, so we've gone through the whole build process, and I think you've kind of uncovered all the secrets to the build process, and we talked about all the different things we could do with this. we're about to get into the actual flying experience, and there's only a couple people here who know how it flies. So that's kind of the big thing that we want to find out is how does this plane fly? And Marc has been waiting so anxiously to explain to everyone what it's like to fly this plane.
Yeah, to be honest, I was really surprised. So, as I mentioned in the beginning already, I was pretty nervous as it was my first DIY plane and I had no clue how much reflex it needs and all that stuff. So I really guessed that, and I didn't want to launch it in manual mode because if you have no one to throw it for you, you can't just react. So I used auto launch and I was really surprised. Of course, it's a little bit too light for what it should be and underpowered. So I was flying pretty slow most of the time. But it really was, it flies like on rails. I don't have any problems with stalling. If I just climb too fast for the motor or for the power, it will just dip the nose, and you can really feel when you are too slow. So it's really easy to fly. I would say it's even easier to fly than the AR Ring.
Wow.
Absolutely. So I did a stall test. I tried to get it somehow out of control, but it was just impossible. So if I go full pitch up and throttle down, it will just dip the nose and it will completely flare and glide down. I have full control over the ailerons or elevons. There's absolutely no worry. So even for a beginner, I think it's a really nice plane. The only, I'm not sure if I should call it a downside. The only problem I had is when I tried to land it, because on my spot where I was 2 times now, even today, I had to land in a specific directions. And when I come in, there are trees everywhere, single trees everywhere. So I have to come in a little bit steep. And as soon as you come into the ground effect, that thing won't go down. it just glides forever. I think when I reached the ground, or I was close to the ground at about 50 kilometers per hour, it really glided for 70 or 80 meters until I was slow enough to touch down. That was really impressive.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I think there was one moment I think because I didn't have any speed measurements on the plane, but I think it was 15. How fast do you walk? 5 kilometers per hour? The walking speed is more like that. So I landed with that speed, pitch up, some throttle. It was like a feet-tall landing, and against the wind. So there was a little bit of wind. So yeah, it glides forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you're going to do, Marc, is once you get the other motor on there, you're going to give specs on the group for like the auto launch for this plane and for different PIDs for setups like you did with the AR Wing.
Yeah, of course I will do that. But to be fair, you can put the mini drag preset on there, and you don't have any issues. It flies really, really well with that PIDs already. I didn't do a tune yet or auto tune because I don't want to make a full tune before I have the final motor set up. It just makes no sense, because if it gets heavier, I have to retune anyway. And but as soon as all that is finished, I will put the full setup on the website, of course.
So when you have a full setup, what happens is you just put Marc's things in. If you can follow along, if you're playing similar enough to it, if you have a completely different motor setup, and it might not work. But what you'll have to do, the only thing you have to do is the auto trim, not the auto tune, but just do an auto trim, and then the plane should be good to fly.
Yeah, basically, yes. That's absolutely true. At the beginning, when I got the first flight, I did an auto trim, and it was a little bit weird because the reflex was pretty strong and much stronger on one side than on the other one. And I talked with the author about that. And the reason was the CG was just a little bit too forward still. So the first plan was to have the CG at about 125 millimeters. And author, you said you flew it without flight controller, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you had no stabilization, no acro mode
No,
or
no.
whatever. So
Yeah.
you trimmed on your radio. But then I have moved the CG a little bit further back to 130 millimeters. And then after the auto trim, both elevons were pretty much at the same position. One is 1 millimeter up, of course, because of the motor torque. But the trim is really nice. But it's really important to have it trimmed mechanically, because the reason is these very big elevons have a lot of authority, and even very small movements make a big impact on the plane behavior. So really make an auto trim it mechanically, do an auto trim again, and be sure to have a really good center point of the servos at the end.
Perfect. So that's, if you know how to do a manual trim, if you know how to fly manual, and this is like, Arthur, you've flown this plane in manual, and just to get it set up right, and that way you're ready for the flight controller.
Yep.
I'm ready. Yeah, that's the next step. I always fly my designs clean, just the receiver and the battery, and that's it, and nothing, no flight controller whatsoever. And if it flies right, then I install the flight controller. Right.
So you don't really, when you do that, the whole idea is pretty much what you do is you take the plane up for doing a manual trim. What we're suggesting for this plane is to start off with, even if you put the flight controller in, is to bypass the flight controller, put in a regular receiver, whatever brand you feel like putting in there. Let the thing take off. So just, you don't have the flight controller plugged in at all. And that's the most important thing. Just, it's completely unwired to this. You might even want to run your own separate ESC. Let the plane take off. You fly it in manual. You get a good feel for it. If you know how to fly in line of sight, then you know how to do trim. Then, you fly around and get it up to, 50 to 100 meters up. Fly around for, 5 minutes till you feel like this plane is capable of flying. You usually want to do this on somewhat of a non-windy day. Bring it back down. While you're at the field, do a manual trim. So set this thing back up so that what you're trying to do is make sure you have zero trim. By the time you're done, all of your trims are centered, and that it should fly perfectly. And if you could do that, then you could go into the flight controller. You can go into your auto trim, and that will be it. The plane should be pretty much ready to go.
Yeah, correct.
Basically, if you, or that's for the chat especially, if you guys get your plane, in the manual there will be a part where the pre-maiden reflex is mentioned. I think you added that, Arthur, right?
Which part?
The reflex that I have measured and sent to you.
Yeah. That's that's what it initially was. That reflex. Yeah.
Yes. So I after I trimmed in everything, so I measured the exact reflex that is needed for the CG. How at what angle the control surface should be exactly based on the fuselage here, and everyone who builds this plane should really follow that. If you follow that exact reflex and put the CG at the correct position, the maiden will be really, really easy, because it basically launches like a mini drag. You just pull it, grab it at the nose and just guide it up into the air and give some throttle, and it will rise up. What I also
sorry.
What I also did is it's a little bit strange for some people maybe. My servo horns here are not centered. I have put them one notch to the back. So at this way I have more travel to pull up than to push the plane down, and that makes it really easy to have a good authority to keep the nose up if needed. But still, as it flies slightly nose heavy, you have no problems to push the nose down anyway with less movement.
So what
for
pitch
pitch
are you using for this plane? And the configurator, what pitch are you using?
What do you mean, what pitch?
And in the configuration tab on the INAV configurator, you put a pitch value in, usually between 2.5 and 5.
Ah, you mean the board alignment. The board alignment. Yeah, it's 5 degrees. So the plane has no built-in, or just a very low built-in angle of attack. so the fuselage inside of the fuselage where the flight controller sits is basically parallel to the ring short, and it needs about 5 degrees up trim of the nose to fly level in angle mode at about 70 kilometers per hour.
Huh, interesting.
So if I don't add that pitch, it will descend at about 2 meters per second. It's just 5 degrees difference to keep level.
A slight deviation on the topic here. I have a question for Darren. He's like, oh no, what's going to happen now? A lot of us use the wonderful, and I do mean wonderful, build for the OpenTX and the group. The one thing I've noticed is like, and we've had this conversation a few times before, which is, do you have enable auto launch all the time, or if you enable it on a switch, what switch? Is there a possibility that you can throw a switch, unused switch, to put auto launch on in future versions of this?
Yeah, no problem at all. I mean, I personally use it on a switch. I know Marc uses it all the time. At the moment, I don't think we got it at all on there. So, there's no reason why we can't put it in there. Maybe as an option. The only problem with making options is there's about 6 different versions already for the different transmitters, so that doubles the.
You're saying actually the 6 different versions because you have the some of them have less switches than others.
Yeah, so you've got like a QX7 version, a X9D version, 2 X9D versions, 2 Horus versions. So there are a few different versions of the OpenTX model already based on the transmitter. But yeah, there's no reason why we can't put a switch on for auto tune. I mean, not auto tune, auto launch.
I think all of them have knobs on the top, so the left knob is not being used on this one at all.
The left knob is the OSD switching.
On your plane, no, that's on a switch.
Yeah, it might make more sense to move the OSD to the knob and then put the auto launch on a switch, because it's more of a like a specific click. Whereas if Marc has his OSD on the knob, I do the same thing, and it's really nice because you can have 5 different OSD setups.
4 actually, but yeah.
Well, off. 4 and then off. So,
okay, yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, we can certainly sort something out.
Oh, that'd be great. So we can make that upgrade this. I'm giving Darren more work here. He's like, damn you, Steve.
So we need to do the X-Lite version as well. So that will be coming at some point.
You know what's funny? For the Raphax, not the Raphax, the Drift. It's the first plane I use all analog knobs and sliders. Because I added, I tried out a new feature that someone in the group recently posted, where you can use the knob to select different items in the OSD screen, and then switch to auto stem to do in-flight tuning in real time. I needed to move my auto tune and auto trim to the right slider, and on the left slider I have a mix to have spoilerons on the up and down spoilerons for testing. So I really use all analog inputs and all switches only on the Drift.
Can you elaborate on that a bit more? You said switching between OSD elements so that then you can do tuning or something.
Yes.
I haven't seen that.
That's the adjustment feature in INAV. You can have these adjustments where you can activate a specific item. Adjustments, yeah. And I use one knob to switch between, I think, 8 or 9 different items. And if you have shown them in the OSD, they will actually blink fast. And then you can use a 3-position switch to move to change them up and down. So you can do in-flight tuning, like the board pitch alignment. I can change in-flight. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, I realized you could do all of the stuff with the adjustments. I didn't realize you could also have it show up on the OSD so you can actually see what you're doing. Because I have that exact mix for the board pitch alignment, but I'm kind of doing it blind all the time.
Yeah,
That's quite a nifty way to do it.
Yeah, of course, you need to manually set a tuning OSD for that to have all the elements there, but if you select them, they will actually blink.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is that he'll put out a video on this and explain everything how he does it. The bad news will be in German. So if you don't speak German fluently, no.
I have no video about that yet.
I know.
Then you've got more work to do, Mark.
To be honest, I have about 7 or 8 topics right now I want to make videos about, but I just don't have the time.
Jeez, it's so brilliant. Yeah, that's it. You know, and then the thing about the OpenTX build that we have for the group, this was, I mean, literally, Mark and I started talking about this probably a year and a half ago, and so you know, it's something that's evolving. So now we're looking at it, and now we have enough time with it where this makes absolute perfect sense. Where you have an OSD switch on a knob that's not being used, so that would be perfect. And then there's also you can incorporate some of Mark's ideas in there as well, so that you can do a lot more tuning in flight. So this is all around kind of really interesting stuff, and that's how the group grows. We're just synergizing and thinking of ideas how to make things better and better. So keep things fantastic. And you know, it's one of the points that Luke brought up quite a few times ago when we talked, which is that you should always be thinking of what you can do next to your plane to improve it.
I'm not sure that was quite what I said. I think I said more along the lines of I can't stop thinking what I'm going to do next with the plane, but I guess it amounts to the same thing.
Yeah, so you constantly, I mean, that was one of the topics we brought up this week, which is we had somebody who posted an old PAL video, a good guy. He was a vlogger, and he kind of went through and posted an old PAL video, and it was interesting. His whole thing was that turning off the P gains on your flight controller, and PAL has a whole reason for doing this. And we, as a group, we've tested it. Some of us liked it, a lot of us didn't. And so, but the thing is like the point we're trying to get across is you should always be thinking about, as opposed to this being something that's a static plane you buy at a hobby shop, you plug the battery in and you throw it. This is something you can constantly change as far as the plane is concerned, and think of things, all the values. Just don't change values without knowing what you're doing, but there's so much information on each and every value in INAV, so you should be able to look it up. So, anyway.
If in doubt, look at the INAV wiki. It's amazing.
So, okay.
Or now, the INAV Fixed Wing Group website, I guess. I think there's quite a bit of information there now as well, isn't there? Give it a little
That's
plug.
right.
Yep.
It has links to Darren's, was it Following with Style?
Oh yeah, we've got links to, so anyone that's sort of prevalent in the group or anyone else we'd like to add or is sorry, my tongue's gone, a contributor I should say, is we've got links to their YouTube and their websites and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's all on there. There's a lot of information. So Mark's YouTube is great, obviously, for INAV stuff. My YouTube, I've started doing a bit more OpenTX stuff. So there's lots of useful information on the group, on the website, as well as just the builds and the how-to guides and all the tuning guides, all that good stuff.
You've even got my website linked on it. I feel blessed. I'm honoured.
You should be honored. Not many people are linked right now. We need to get some more links up on there. But one of the things that was interesting, though, when you're talking about OpenTX, is that Banggood has these, if you sign up, they have these like live demos where they go through and they give out coupon codes and they talk about the products. So they had like a 3.5 hour demo session that I guess the guy did from midnight till about 3:30 in the morning. So he's practically falling asleep, but he's just talking about all the different products. But they had 2 OpenTX radios. One was the Jumper 18, and the other one was, I believe it was the Radio Master under a different label. But so there's so many OpenTX models coming out right now, which I know Darren just absolutely loves because you have to make an OpenTX build for each one of those.
Yeah. the annoying thing is like the radios you've mentioned, like the Jumper T16 all the way through the T18, the Radio Master TX16. The OpenTX side of it, it's basically a Horus. I know hardware is completely different and they're different levels, but from the OpenTX side, all that cares about is what inputs you've got and what switches you've got, and they're pretty much the same build. But if you copy them into that model, it doesn't like it because it's listed as a different transmitter. So that's why at the moment we don't actually have a separate one for the T16 or the TX16 or the T18. But if you use the Horus one, it will convert it and it will just work straight away on those radios. So I think we might have to stick with doing that, because otherwise we're just going to have lots of different builds which are all physically the same, but there's just a little conversion process.
So the conversion process is an OpenTX, right?
Yes, yeah. So when you import it into Companion, it will basically pop up saying that it's not the right model for this radio. Do you want to convert it?
Okay.
So you just say yes, convert it, and then you can copy it across. And if it's 100% compatible, which the Horus is with the T16, T18, I believe the X9D version or the QX7 or the X9D version is with the T12. It's all on the website, the INAV Fixed Wing Group website, which ones are compatible with which. But yeah, if you convert it, it will work just fine.
Okay, that's fantastic, because what happens is they come out with one really great radio, and then China will reverse engineer it and come out with 5 similar ones, and so we can't keep up with every single iteration of it. But it sounds like this is a simple, yes, convert over and you're done type of thing, and the OpenTX companion. So just convert over to the right model. What will happen is that when you pull up the specs, it will be wrong, and then it will say this is the wrong radio, would you like to convert it anyways? And you just say yes, and then it will work, right?
Yeah, I mean, you only ever get into trouble with conversions when it's from 2 different types of radio. So, like, for example, I'm moving my models over from my X9D onto the Horus, and because even though I've got a 6-way switch on my X9D, it's labeled as a different switch. So when I convert them over, it comes up with errors. But if all the switches are the same with the same labels, then it will just copy across without any issues. So yeah, it's not a problem.
Perfect. Okay. All right, Marc, we're back to the wonderful flying experience that you're having. So you say this thing is very easy to fly. It's more fun than the AR wing.
Yes. Let's say it's a slightly different experience. I still like to fly the AR wing, of course. The AR wing is more agile. You can have faster roads, faster pitches, all that stuff. But it's basically because it's a less heavy plane. It's a lighter plane. It's way overpowered what I put in there. So I have about 2.5 kilograms of thrust, at least for a short amount of time, at a 960 or 980 gram plane. So that's a whole different story. But basically, if you fly the AR wing, you always think that you are flying on a bumpy road. That's the big difference. If you fly the Raphax, it's like on rails. If you have enough speed, enough power in there, and you go fast, it's really like on rails. If there's wind, it doesn't care. That's a big main difference on there.
I think that's where you and I have a difference on. We don't have many differences, but you like to have the 4.5 degree board alignment for pitch in the configuration tab in INAV. And I'm finding it's more like about 2.8 or maybe even 2.5.
You are talking about the AR wing right now?
Yes.
Yeah, it completely depends on the plane. Also, if you have calibrated the flight controller in the plane, or if you have calibrated it externally. For the Dart 250G, for example, I have a board and a pitch alignment, pitch and roll alignment changed, because the sticky foam pad I used under there is not completely straight, so the board is actually a little bit aligned sideways, so I have to compensate for that too. So that's a pure tuning thing. But if you really put the flight controller in there completely flat on the bottom of the fuselage, and you have calibrated it outside, then 5 to 6 degrees is a very good value on that plane.
Okay. All right. So, but back to the Raphax, this thing is, are you finding that what I've kind of noticed is, like, when you bring it to land, is it really floats, kind of a floaty plane, but it's also kind of fast at the same time?
Yes and no. It reduces speed pretty fast if you level out. That's not a big problem. The problem is that because of the big ring area, I mean, if you see that the chord is really long on that plane compared with the wingspan, and even the fuselage itself, because of its shape, is generating lift. It's basically completely generating lift all over the place. You really easy get into the ground effect. And as soon as you're on the ground effect about 30 to 40 centimeters off the ground, it will just refuse to go down. You have either to push the nose down and hit the ground pretty hard, or you just let it go until it flares from alone.
Okay. Are you bringing it in hot? Are you bringing it in fast? So that's why you have to slow it down, or is it just kind of? I've kind of noticed, especially like the AR wing. See, the area you fly in sounds kind of similar to where I fly in as well. It's 400 feet, was about 120 meters, which of field, and then I've got trees that are about 60 meters high, surrounding the outside of the field. And so what happens is you have to, if I find that if you take it in steep, you don't have very much space to land it, but if you let it kind of slowly kind of drift downwards, you get the feel of the plane and bring it in slow, then I can come in for a slower landing. But it sounds like this plane, even with that, won't even do it at a 30-kilometer pace.
Yeah, if I don't, I'm not sure right now. Let me quickly check my recordings from today. I think I haven't copied it from the camera. I can, if you give me a few minutes, I can show you how the landing actually goes with that plane, and how much trouble I have to get it down if I come in hot.
We'll talk to Arthur then about his flying experience with the plane. Because, I mean, Arthur, you've had the prototype as what you flew. Have you actually flown one of the actual final build planes?
Yeah, no, I flew it. What I found out that with the ground effect, you can see that on my video I posted some time ago, is that it floats forever. And what I do is that you can pull up and give it no throttle. You don't need to be afraid of any stallment. So if you pull it up a little bit, it brakes or it slows down more easy, and then you can land slowly. That's what I do.
Okay, that sounds.
If it won't slow, if the ground effect is too high, if there's a windy day, then it's easier to land on a spot than when there's no wind.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask you, I think I talked to you about this before in the past, but we should bring it up here, which is why do you have just a vertical stabilizer on this?
I like vertical stabilizers. It helps to get it more stable in the air, and I want to get rid of the winglets. That's on this way I can keep them small. And yeah, the big fin on the back, it just gives it more stability.
So okay, so that is similar in design to the what is that? Ready-made RC Goblin.
I don't know the Goblin.
Not really. I mean, the Goblin has got a single vertical stabilizer in the middle and no winglets, but it's a completely different plane, really. It's a plank with big round fuselage, like a American football.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, that thing. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I honestly don't know any planes or any hot wire cut planes with a one vertical stabilizer.
Okay, so Mark found the video. We're gonna switch back to him in a second here.
Oh, before I forgot to mention, because we talked about the reflex on the elevons, and it's more or less 0. And Mark stated you had 1 millimeter, I think, up.
I had 1 millimeter difference between both.
Difference between them.
Yeah.
What I usually do, because the wing has an washout, so it's a bit twisted, so the wingtip goes up at the end. So normally, like the AR wing, you need to put the S800 has it. You need to put more reflex in the elevons to get it more stable. And with the Raphax, it's all built in the wing itself. So actually, the Elevon is it's an extension of the airfoil of the wings airfoil. That's what it is, and therefore it doesn't need any more reflex than the wing has.
Yeah, I'm not sure when you talk about reflex, because my top side of the ring, if you it's hard to explain. So if I go from the top side here and it's in neutral position, it will actually go slightly up. So there would be a gap if I put a ruler on here. There would be a slight gap, but I think it's so minimal. I tested it when I go into a dive and then I cut the throttle. I leave the sticks go in manual mode without stabilization. You can see that it slightly pulls up until it flies level, loses speed, and then it drops the nose again. So it has some reflex in there, but it's basically just stabilizing itself.
Okay.
It sounds like what he's on about is that the reflex is built into the airfoil rather than having to have separate reflex with the Elevons.
Yeah.
Yes. I think I have added a tiny bit of reflex to the Elevons anyway, just to have that kind of extra pull up if I need it. I think.
Well, it doesn't need to have that. I usually. I do that with all my models. It's more or less straight in perpendicular with the airfoil, so it's one extension of the wing. So if you are correct when you say there's more or less 1 millimeter of a gap when you measure it on top, on the bottom is the other millimeter negative. So because there's a washout and there's the airfoil has that shape, it follows the it looks like it has reflex, but it follows the shape of the airfoil.
Okay, I understand that. Yeah, okay, I found the landing video. Should I show you? Or
yes, please.
Okay, so let me share the Skype screen first, and then I go into screen share. Here we go. So that was already the second landing attempt. It was still much too steep, as you can see, because there are always trees around here. So at this point, wait a second, let me, just so you hear it, let me turn on the volume a little bit. So you hear when I cut the throttle, or I'm just gliding at this point. And I wasn't even pulling up. You see that? You see that when it goes down, suddenly the nose pulls up. Now it's like it's bouncing from the ground.
And it's flies straight. Oh yeah, I see it.
It's literally bouncing from the ground by the ground effect. So I need to go around because I was still at 50 or 60 kilometers per hour. And yeah, and then I did another try. I'm not sure if that was the final one, so I went in a little bit lower. I think that was the landing. No, yes. It was still so fast. I'm still gliding. Now I'm giving throttle. It was still too fast, and even that I hit some grass or bushes or whatever. And then after the third try, I finally managed to land because I was too lazy. I don't want to walk 100 meters to get the plane back. And on the last try, when I landed, I pushed it down. And I flew between the trees just to get a little bit slower.
Push the nose. I usually try to pull them up, right? Yeah, wow. So are we seeing the difference between the chords? I mean, like, for example, a really small chord is the S800. And I know that's Arthur's favorite plane. And this is the polar opposite of it, which is a huge chord. And because of that, you're having the ground effect when you land.
Yeah.
So were you using spoilerons on that, Marc?
No, not on that one. That was on the drift where I tried to play around with spoilerons. Right,
might be an idea on that if it's so.
Yeah, but spoilerons on a wing.
Does that they have us on the what?
Yeah, you can't really have spoilerons on a wing. That doesn't quite work.
Yeah, because then you just
unless you're split elevons.
Oh yeah, I have an idea.
Buffalo has it.
let me think. I have an idea for that. I won't announce anything yet, but an idea came up. So this will have an second part.
You can have a parachute that pops out the back of the plane.
No, not that. It makes you fully control the plane. Yeah, I've got an idea. I will work that out. I will come back later.
So what? What we should ask the question, Mark. What time is it right now?
It's 9 p.m. here in Germany, so we are 2 hours in now.
Okay. So we probably need to cut this thing off here pretty soon here. But
Skype is complaining.
somebody has to get back to their kids and everything else like that. But what I'm looking at is this looks like a plane that's highly stable once you get it in the air. It is something that is it's not going to roll to the left and right a lot as long as you got it set up properly. Is that kind of what you found?
Yeah, so it just keeps its attitude. it's like even if you fly in manual mode, it feels like it has a stabilizer in there. When I showed my first flight video to Arthur, I did some barrel rolls, very slow, and Arthur didn't even believe me in the first place that I was able to make such a slow roll without sliding over the sides. So it was just like in what's the English word?
Slow motion.
Like in slow motion,
Yeah.
it was rolling.
How it looked like, yeah.
It's really, really stable.
Okay. So Luke, do you have to go?
I don't have to go just yet. I'm meeting a friend to go flying at past, so I didn't realise we were going to be on for so long. I guess we actually kind of normally are on this long. Yeah, I just didn't plan very well.
That's okay. We'll wrap this up soon. So what I'm looking at is that this is a plane that is so as far as cinema is concerned, because you were talking about the mounts you put on the nose, is this something that would be good for doing? A lot of times we're looking for a small plane like this that can do video.
What do you mean if the plane is good for video making?
Right.
Yeah, due to
how stable it is, it looks great for video.
Due to the stable flying characteristic, I need to see how it actually flies at very high speeds. So the highest level speed I can reach with that motor setup is about 110, 120 kilometers per hour, roundabout. But in that park where I was flying, I don't want to annoy the neighbors too much because at the moment they are just accepting me when I fly there. But I think it's really, really nice for taking aerial footage. You could even design, or I think if you, it just comes into my mind, if you look in the battery bay, there is so much room in front of that battery mount plate that's slightly broken for me right now. You could even make a down-facing HD camera in there. So you just poke a hole, or maybe make a square hole, put an adapter in there, a 3D printed adapter, and then use a session-style camera pointing straight down. You can then using it for area mapping or something.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say put a pod on the top of it right there.
Yeah, then you will get issues with the battery bay. But you could make the hinge at the back and open it that way.
Interesting. Okay.
Or print a different cover.
Yeah, that's true.
Interesting. All right. So it's nice and stable for something like a RunCam 2. It should get some pretty stable video from it if you have a not so windy day.
Can you repeat? Sorry, I was distracted.
Oh yeah, for putting a RunCam 2 in there for a day that's not super windy, it's a nice stable video platform.
Yeah, indeed, it really is. I mean, I have posted the link to my sunset session video before. It was still a little bit yawing, wriggling on the yaw axis because I was flying very slow. It was about 60, 70, 80 kilometers per hour with the low weight. With higher weight, it will for sure be more stable. I think Arthur has flown it faster than I have with a more powerful setup. And I've seen some of his videos he made with when he flew line of sight, but put the what was it, Mobius camera?
I had a Runcam 2 like form factor. What is it? The Q5 Q6.
Yeah, and he had that camera inside, and it was really, really stable, even on the YAR axis.
And that there was no stabilization on that video camera.
Yeah. So a lot of people are saying that let's say the mini drag, for example, it's famous for its own stability it has, and but even the mini drag at slow speeds has yaw wiggle. That's very, very similar. If you fly at high speeds, it's at least as stable.
And the AR wing has yaw waggles too, right?
Yeah, so the AR wing is. I think if you use the wooden ringlets on the AR wing, you laminate them so they don't break, and you have a good speed, you get rid of the yaw wiggle, but then you will get this one.
Pitch
it
waggle,
will jitter on pitch a lot. Yeah, that's the biggest problem on the AR wing if you fly really fast.
So this is okay. So fantastic. So well, we're gonna probably start to get close to wrapping this up. The flying experience on this plane then is phenomenal. So it's his own flying experience, is what you're saying. Much different than the AR wing, and much different than as far as a Delta wing. This is about as good as it gets in this size. I mean, you have for example, you have flown this plane, and you also have flown the Talon GT. So what are the similarities between those two planes, or differences?
Okay, I think with the Talon GT, you can't really compare them. That's a whole different story. The Talon GT, of course, has, I would say, yeah, the Talon GT has more yaw stability. It flies like an arrow through the air. But the big difference is the Talon GT has all his weight concentrated in the center, in the fuselage, and very lightweight wings. So you have always some kind of wobble on the roll axis you don't have with this one. Because here the foam is denser, you have much thicker wings, you have heavier wings, and so the roll rigor is much less on this one.
Okay, well that sounds fantastic. You know, really, I think you did a fantastic job of explaining this. It sounds like it's to me it sounds like this is the plane of the year as far as what you're looking at for an INAV plane. This is something that I think it's pretty much going to be a word of mouth type of plane where people are going to get their hands on it, and people and they're like, yeah, this is a great plane, and I want to grab one myself. But I will tell you this, there's not a warehouse full of these things. These are one at a time kind of made planes. Yep. And that, when you order them, the thing I'm worried about is that a lot of people are going to order these pretty quickly, and then there's going to be a backlog for Arthur here. And then it might take a few weeks for you to get them out. But it is absolutely a stunning plane. And Arthur we've been holding off on this price for quite a while now. Are you ready to announce the price?
May I?
Sure.
The price for the community is 124.90 euros. So that's a discount on the shop price, and it's normally it's 149. I think that's more or less that. So it's
25 euros.
Yeah, 125 euros for this kit, pre-built fuselage, etc.
All right, so shipping into different places, like shipping into Europe, is roughly how much?
Yeah, to the United Kingdom is around 15, 16 euros. To Germany, it's about, what would it be? 9 or 10, more like that, or maybe cheaper. To the United States, Australia, etc., it's around 38 euros to ship it.
Yeah, it's expensive to come to the United States. The thing about the United States...
Yeah, you can do a group buy, and then I put everything on in a big box.
That's what I was going to suggest, is that what we might want to do is when people in the United States want to buy this, especially if they live close to each other, and what we have a lot of people in Southern California, and we have a lot of people on the East Coast, especially around the New York area. So if you feel like doing that and getting some of the buddies together, go on to our INAV Fixed Wing group, webs.com, go the website, go look, see who's in your neighborhood. Maybe talk it out and see if you want to get 2 or 3 people together to buy one of these planes, so the shipping is a lot more reasonable. You can also do that wherever you live. If you live in Russia, there's not too many people in the group there, so you're pretty much buying on your own. But the nice thing about the UK is like there's like we in Germany, we're absolutely just tons of people everywhere in the UK and Germany in this group. So we get together with a few other people to buy a plane shouldn't be a problem.
Me and Darren, I think, live about 600 meters apart. So
Yeah, I'll be seeing his plane fly out the window soon.
yeah.
I have one last thing to say. So Steve already said that I'm really happy with that plane and I really like it. That's totally true. For me, just for me personally, this is right now the number 2 plane of my daily drivers. But only number 2, not because the flying characteristic or everything or anything. Number 1 is my Dart 250G. The only point why the 250G is on place 1 is portability, because I don't have a car. When I will have a car and I don't have any problems with transporting a plane, I think this will be my daily driver then.
Cool. That's nice to hear.
Fantastic. You did a fantastic job with this plane. And Lord knows I was worried as hell about the introducing.
No.
It's so fantastic. I'm glad that this has really worked out. This looks like a phenomenal plane. And I have one to order myself.
Yes, you will enjoy it. I'm pretty sure you will.
I'm going to enjoy it. I will paint it, though. I've been telling you right up front that it's going to be painted. It's going to be beautiful.
I want to see your color scheme.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it now too, and so it's gonna be kind of fun. This is, it's gonna be a cool plan. It looks like something absolutely wonderful to fly. And Arthur, congratulations! You built yourself a hell of a plane. I know the really gonna enjoy it. Thank you for doing this for the group.
Hopefully it makes a lot of people very happy. So that was my main goal, to make people happy, to build your own and compare and share and all that stuff. Make mounts, talk about it, enjoy it. That's the main reason. Yeah.
So it's not really a store bought like something you buy off the shelf, and it's not quite a scratch build. Even though like the flight test planes, you can buy the kits pre-cut, so you can put them together yourself. This is something very different, and it's a really fun experience when you get into this kind of plane. It's just really. Once you have this, you will like, oh yeah, okay, now I see what people are talking about. So
and it's tree proof. Marc showed it. Not a scratch, not a single dent. Yeah.
That is a big advertising point.
Yeah.
we got Tree Basher and Motor Burner here in the group.
Cool.
Yes. And Luke's our student. How long are you off for the summer? When you're going back to school?
Well, I'm on an industrial placement, so I'm at work for the next year. I started that April time, so I guess I'll be working until April next year, and then I'll be finishing my learning to fly and going back to university about September. So
this is part of your program. They give you a year off to go work somewhere.
Yeah, I mean it's not so much part of my program. It's more just like I'm choosing to take a year out, but the university do support it quite heavily. So, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. My daughter was looking to go to college, and there was one of the colleges. It was part of the curriculum was that you had to take a year off, which sounds.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, it sounds groovy. It sounds like it'd be a fun time, except that you have to like pack up all your stuff, put it in storage. And then you move away, and then you move back, and then all your friends are like graduating, or you need to find a new set of roommates. So it's kind of a nightmare.
That's my trick. All of my roommates are also doing year placements, or they're either doing a year placement or doing a 4-year course instead of a 3-year course. And I've got a job only 10 miles from where the university is, so I'm staying in the same accommodation. So yeah, it's worked out quite well.
Oh, fantastic. Sounds cool. Darren, I was gonna say before I get to Darren, it's like just we having a problem finding the barbers these days. Luke, is this like the rock star hairstyle?
Well, yeah, it was a bet with some friends that I wouldn't shave or cut my hair until the end of lockdown here in the UK. But the problem is, then the end of lockdown started getting a bit fuzzy, literally and metaphorically. So it's has it ended yet? Who knows?
That's the same thing happened to Darren too. He started like I guess the start of the Spanish flu. Yes.
I think my lockdown would have started about 20 odd years ago.
This is a big change for me. I've always been clean shaven. It's a bit different.
Yeah. So Darren, I didn't really realize how long your hair was till like today. You have it flowing. So.
Oh yeah.
Come on, give us a little whip.
It's down to middle of my back. There we go.
Yeah, we're just jealous, Mark and I. So, so that sounds great. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you have questions about the plane, be sure to write Arthur or ask Mark or everything in the group. And for everybody, excuse me, I get emotional. Whenever it's time to say goodbye, it's so hard for me. Thank you for joining us today. It's just kind of like, the worst thing about doing these things is I forget people are watching. I think it feels like we're just talking amongst ourselves. And then every once in a while, Mark's like, we have a question or something like that. So, guys, thanks so much for joining today. This has been a great chat, and I definitely look forward to the next one. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.